The story begins in Japan with a girl named Akane still in her bed. She woke up, went to the bathroom, and felt nervous about returning to school after a scary incident with a stalker. After showering, she looked in the mirror, got dressed, and hesitantly opened the door, feeling scared momentarily before realizing everything was okay. She was driven to school where all the students greeted her, but she encountered Minoru, the only person she disliked, because he always mispronounced her name. Despite his apology, he continued to mispronounce her name. Akane noticed he never looked into her eyes, which made her dislike him even more. During class, Akane excelled as the teacher's pet, trying to be nice to everyone to avoid being hated. Later, she heard beautiful piano music coming from outside, played by Minoru. As the other students left for home, Akane called her driver to pick her up, only to find out he had been seriously injured by criminals. As a result, Akane decided to walk home alone when she wasn't picked up by her driver. She realized it had been a while since she walked home alone since the incident. Suddenly, she heard a noise, and a scary man who had been looking for her showed up. She tried to run away, but a car blocked her path, and she was captured by the men who planned to kidnap her. At the last moment, she saw Minoru, and she fainted. A few hours later, she woke up and wondered where she was. The kidnappers told her to wait until her father paid the ransom. Meanwhile, one of the kidnappers talked too much, and they started arguing. Then, we see Minoru, ready to fight the criminals. One of the kidnappers told Akane that he liked her body and wanted to have a baby with her. He tried to force her to pick up a soap, reminding her of the day when a stalker kidnapped her and did bad things to her body. Suddenly, they heard a noise on the roof, and the kidnapper got scared. Minoru entered the building, intending to punish the villains. He introduced himself as Stylish Ruffian Slayer. The criminal tried to shoot Minoru with his pistol, but he threw a knife at him, defeating one of the kidnappers. His partner was impressed by Minoru. The opponent mentioned he was bored since he was discharged from the army. Then, Minoru said he always wanted to fight a soldier, and they started fighting. The criminal managed to injure Minoru, but at the last moment, Minoru parried his attack, saying that crowbars are more useful than a knife. He told the ex-army soldier that he could use his weapon like a katana. Suddenly, his enemy changed his fighting style and said that Manu had a weakness that he exploited. Then, Manu realized he couldn't play around anymore and decided to get serious. He knew that crowbars had a lot of potential to defeat enemies because he used it to beat up many motorcycle gangs. When the criminal found out about this, he remembered a guy who hunted gangs every night. After this, the ex-soldier reached for his pistol, but Minoru stopped him and showed him the true potential of a crowbar. He defeated his enemies and broke all their bones until they lost consciousness. After that, he went to Akane, took a knife, freed her, and told her to be more careful on the way home next time. Then, he disappeared, leaving Akane wondering where the masked hero had gone. Later, the police were called, but the identity of the mysterious hero remained hidden. The next morning, Akane went to school and ran into Minoru again. He remembered her name, and she was surprised that he was looking into her eyes for the first time. A few days later, it was reported that high school student Minoru died in a truck accident. It was then revealed that Minoru had dreamed of being a hero since he was a child. He trained hard every day to become stronger, but he knew he still wasn't powerful enough. One night, after his training, Minoru Kagino ran onto the road and was unfortunately hit by a truck. He died instantly but was reborn in another world. Retaining his memories, he encountered a girl who would later become his sister, and he realized he had arrived in a world where magic was real. Believing it to be the ideal place to fulfill his dream of becoming the strongest, he adopted the name Sid. After several years, he gained immense power, yet he kept it concealed, even from his sister Claire, during their training sessions. Each night, Sid battled against nefarious groups in their vicinity. During one mission, he stumbled upon a monster imprisoned and brought it back to his hideout for experimentation. After a month, he successfully lifted the curse from the monster, revealing it to be a female elf. Sid explained to her that she had been cursed by devil cultists aiming to resurrect a powerful demon. Introducing himself as Shadow, he bestowed upon the elf the name Alpha. Together, they established an organization named Shadow Garden with the aim of rescuing others afflicted by malevolent curses and combating the cults. Prior to Claire's 15th birthday, scheduled when she was to begin studying at Midgar Academy, she vanished from her room. Alpha led the search while Sid summoned the 7 shadows to aid in her rescue. As the leader of the abductors conversed with Claire, oblivious to the attack by the 7 shadows, Alpha confronted him. He ingested a drug to bolster his strength and attempted to flee, but he encountered Shadow along the way. They fought, but defeated by Shadow. He tried using another drug to gain more strength, but even that couldn't match Shadow's power, and he lost the fight. After rescuing his sister, she continued attending Midgar Academy. One day, Sid met his beautiful followers, who bid him goodbye for a while. A few years later, at the age of 15, Sid also enrolled in the same school as his sister. There, he met his 2 friends, Skal and Pa. They made a bet that whoever scored the lowest on the recent test would have to approach the princess of Midgar, named Alexia, and confess their love to her. Alexia was the most popular girl in school, and none of the guys who tried to court her had succeeded yet. When they saw the test results, Sid had the lowest score, so he had to do the punishment. In the afternoon after class, Sid nervously approached Alexia while his friends watched from a distance. He expected her to reject him, but to his surprise, she agreed to be his girlfriend. The next day, Sid became famous among the students when news spread that Alexia was now his girlfriend. While they were eating in the canteen, Alexia came and sat beside Sid, and they ate together. She even invited him to join the fencing class because of her influence, allowing Sid to participate. Even though he was from the lowest section, the teacher in their class was named Xenon. Their parents had agreed for Xenon to marry Alexia. That's why Alexia decided to accept Sid as her boyfriend and acted like she was in love with him. She didn't want to marry Xenon. Alexia chose Sid because she thought he belonged to a lower class of people. She assumed she could make him do what she wanted with just a small amount of money. She wasn't disappointed because as long as there was money involved, Sid seemed to do what she asked. They kept pretending to be lovers. The next day, while they were about to enter the school, 3 men were waiting for Sid. They accused him of kidnapping Alexia because he was the last person she was seen with before she disappeared. They took him to a room and tortured him to make him confess where he took Alexia. Sid pretended to be hurt by the torture so they would think he was innocent. Meanwhile, Alexia woke up and found herself tied to a bed in a prison. She saw a monstrous woman beside her. Then, a man came with injections to draw blood from her. He said he needed her blood for an experiment they were doing. After being tortured, Sid was released in the afternoon, but people were still following him on his way home. When he entered his room, Alpha was waiting for him. They talked, and Alpha updated him on Shadow Garden's operations. They knew the cultists had abducted Alexia because they wanted her blood. Before Alpha left, she asked Sid if he wanted her to get rid of those who were following him. A few hours later, Beta came to give an update on the operation they were about to undertake. She also informed Sid that all the shadows were ready. Sid went downstairs to confront the 2 cult members because he knew they had planted evidence in his place that could lead to his arrest again. Suddenly, 2 people fell down. These were the individuals they had ordered to follow Sid. Without hesitation, Sid eliminated them, and their mission began. Meanwhile, Alexia was weak after enduring everything she had been through. The man returned, carrying a large injection filled with blood. He injected it into the female monster, causing it to transform into a horrifying creature. The monster swiftly killed the man who injected her and then released Alexia from her restraints. However, it went wild and began destroying the place to escape. Alexia's sister, Iris, fought the monster with her sword, but no matter how strong her attacks were, the monster kept regenerating. Iris considered chopping the monster into small pieces to hinder its regeneration, but Alpha intervened. Alpha did something to the monster, causing it to immediately revert to its human form. Meanwhile, Alexia started walking to find a way out. She unexpectedly encountered Xenon, and she was surprised to see him there. Xenon revealed that he was the owner of the facility and had funded the experiments. Enraged, Alexia attacked him, and the 2 of them began to fight. As Alexia was weak, Xenon easily defeated her. Then, Shadow appeared and introduced himself to both of them. Xenon attacked Shadow, but was surprised by his speed. They continued to fight, and Xenon emitted powerful auras to show off, but Shadow didn't seem to take the fight seriously. Alex noticed Shadow's sword skills, which seemed ordinary, much like her own. Since Xenon couldn't defeat Shadow, he decided to use his last resort. He drank a red potion and transformed into a big, strong monster-like creature. He attacked Shadow, but couldn't even hit him, and Shadow easily defeated him. After this, Iris saw Alexia and rushed to hug her sister. The next day, Sid and Alexia talked. Alexia begged him to continue pretending to be lovers, but Sid refused. This angered Alexia, and she attacked him. While Sid was walking, bleeding, he bumped into Sherry. Meanwhile, the other members of Shadow met to discuss the results of their recent operation. They also received updates on their ongoing search and investigation of the cults. They learned that a group was using their organization's name to commit evil acts. One day, Iris and Alexia went to Sherry to show her something they found in the cult's facility where they had fought the other night. They believed that Sherry could gather more in-depth information about the matter because of her renowned researching skills. Meanwhile, Sid and his friends went to visit the newly opened store. While they were waiting in line, a woman who worked at the store approached them. She asked Sid if he would be willing to participate in a survey for the store, and he agreed. They went inside the store and went up to the top floor, where they met a woman named Gamma, who was also a member of Shadow Garden. Gamma revealed that she was the owner of the shop and shared that she had used an idea given by Sid to start her business. Sid was surprised by the success of her endeavor, although he knew Gamma was the smartest among the 7 shadows. The only issue was her clumsiness. After settling in, they discussed the imposter who had been posing as a member of Shadow Garden. Gamma introduced Nu as their new member, and even Alpha acknowledged her fighting skills. After their conversation, they hurried home to avoid getting caught past curfew. Suddenly, Sid felt something strange and stopped running. He pretended to have a stomachache and told Skeletal and Potato to go home first. He knew Alexia was nearby, fighting the imposters of Shadow Garden. When they cornered Alexia, Shadow came to her aid and quickly defeated one of them. The other 2 fled, but Shadow caught up to them and eliminated one of them. Nu then appeared and asked Shadow to let her handle the remaining opponent. The enemy attacked Nu, but she managed to defeat them. Meanwhile, in the library, Sid pondered about whom he should give his chocolate to. He decided that the first woman he met would be the one to receive it. As he was getting ready to leave, Sherry approached with a stack of books and placed them next to him. He decided to give her the chocolates, which surprised her. While Sid was walking to school, he sensed that Nu was following him. They spoke, and Nu updated him on the situation with those they had captured the previous night. Nu explained that the captured person had been brainwashed and couldn't provide any useful information. The mastermind behind the brainwashing had been taking children who could use magic from orphanages and poor families to create devils. These imposters also used the name of Shadow Garden to manipulate the true members of the organization into revealing themselves. Although Nu shared a lot of information, Sid was preoccupied with the upcoming duel event. Sid reluctantly agreed to participate in the duel at the insistence of Skeletal and Potato. He planned to use the opportunity to accomplish something. In the duel, he pretended to be weak and allowed himself to be hit by the sword, but he kept getting back up after each attack. Before Rose, the student council president, could unleash her powerful magic, the referee intervened and declared her the winner. While Sid was walking, Sherry called him, and they chatted over coffee. Sherry expressed her gratitude for the chocolates and offered him a bag of cookies. She also expressed her desire to be friends with him, which Sid accepted. Sherry's foster father joined their conversation and recognized Sid too. Then he recognized that the woman in front of him was Sherry Barnett, who was also a well-known person. One day, while they were in the classroom, Rose and another girl entered for the upcoming election. While Rose's companion was explaining the details of the election, Sid suddenly felt something strange. A group of men barged in and introduced themselves as Shadow Garden members. Rose was about to try to fight, but she couldn't use her magic. Suddenly, a man attacked Rose, and Sid immediately pushed her, causing him to be hit by the sword. Because of this, another girl was impressed by his heroism. He pretended to be dead and was left in the room while other students were brought to the auditorium. When no one else was around, he got up and healed his wound. While Sherry was studying the artifact, an enemy named Rex came in through the window. Sherry's guards, named Glenn and Marco, immediately entered and helped Sherry escape. They already knew that the enemies wanted the artifact, which was in Sherry's care. Meanwhile, from the top of the building, Sid was targeting killing the enemies he could see below. As Sherry walked to go to the room where the book with information about magic was placed, Sid secretly helped her so the enemies would not catch her. When she was about to fall down the stairs, he caught her and accompanied her in finding the book. When they found it, Sherry told him that the artifact used in their school that prevented the use of magic was the so-called Eye of Avarice. She added that she could stop it with the artifact. Currently studying, Sherry planned to reach the auditorium through the basement tunnel. She had a hunch that the Eye of Avarice was there because the students were gathered in that area. If she could activate the artifact she was holding near the Eye of Avarice, it would be stopped. However, she left the things she needed in her room. So, Sid volunteered to get her things for her. While Rex was looking for Sherry with a few assistants, Sid attacked them until Rex was left alone. Even though Rex was using his strongest magic, Sid was just beating him until he ended up in a room full of his dead comrades that Sid had killed. He was terrified by what he saw, and Sid finished him immediately. Myo saw the dead bodies of Glenn and Marco, whom she also knew personally. When Sid came, she gave a report that the shadows had entered the school and were just waiting for his order, while Iris Group was also outside the school. Sid asked for her help in finding the things Sherry was asking for. When they completed collecting all of these things, he returned to Sherry. Meanwhile, Iris Group could not take action because of the magic surrounding the entire school. Nu went inside the auditorium and pretended to be a captive. She would give a signal to Gamma's group, which was already above the auditorium. When she was done with the preparations, Sherry tried to activate the artifact and succeeded in doing so. She immediately went to the basement tunnel that led to the auditorium while the leader of the Shadow Garden imposters was wondering why Rex had not yet returned. They were all surprised when they heard a gunshot. To their horror, the enemy started shooting other students one by one. When Sherry arrived at the auditorium, she immediately used the artifact, and the magic surrounding the school disappeared. When Rose felt this, she immediately rushed at the enemy and told the students to attack the others as well. The students rushed quickly and followed Rose's command. So, the leader of the enemies ordered to kill the students. It simply took the artifact thrown by Sherry. Suddenly, Shadow and other members of the Shadow Garden arrived. While the Shadow Garden members were fighting the enemies, Rose saw this as an opportunity to tell the students to leave the auditorium. Sherry ventured to look for her foster father, but she noticed the gas leak. After a few seconds, the building burst into flames. While Gamma and other members were outside, they also noticed that the other school buildings were also on fire. This was done by the leader of the enemy who also left after accomplishing this. The group of Iris was able to enter the school and help the students. She saw Rose and found out the whole incident, that there were two groups who introduced themselves as Shadow Garden and were currently fighting. When they escaped, the Shadow Garden killed the enemies, and Gamma's group also got what they needed from the school. They were just waiting for Shadow to eliminate the leader of the enemy. The leader of the enemy took the books one by one in a room and burned them on the floor. Sid appeared to him and already knew that the leader of the enemies was the assistant principal of the school and Sherry's foster father, Lutheran Barnett. Lutheran began to talk about Sid's past and how he met Sherry's mother, who was also a good researcher. When she found the Eye of Avarice artifact, which she had been searching for a long time, she planned to give it to the government for safekeeping because it was dangerous. However, Lutheran disagreed with her plan, so he killed her. Sherry still didn't know about this. Sid and Lutheran fought, and Sid pretended to be easily defeated. But then, Shadow appeared, and Lutheran used the Eye of Avarice on himself, gaining great power. However, no matter how hard he tried, Lutheran couldn't hit Shadow. He even used his strongest attack, but only ended up injuring himself. Lutheran then tried to manipulate the situation, wanting to blame Shadow for everything and make him a traitor to the world. However, Shadow didn't care about being seen as good or bad. He only followed the path he chose. Shadow then pierced Lutheran's arms and legs, one by one, and did to him what Lutheran did to Sherry's mother. Afterward, Shadow left, leaving Sherry to witness her foster father's death, though Sid chose not to tell her the truth. As Sid was leaving school due to the early vacation given because of the school's destruction, Sherry met him to say goodbye. She thanked Sid for his help and decided to study elsewhere, as there was no reason for her to stay due to the early vacation. The other students went back to their homes. Since Sid didn't have any plans at home, he just stayed away from his sister so she wouldn't make him do anything. He got a letter from Alpha about their next mission, which was in the Sacred Land. Meanwhile, two Shadow members, Beta and Epsilon, argued about who caught Sid's attention more. In the middle of their argument, Nu came to tell them about the new missions from Alpha. On the other hand, sisters Alexia and Iris went to Gamma's shop. Alexia needed to buy things for her upcoming trip to the Sacred Land. Sid and Rose started their trip to the Sacred Land together. He could have gotten there quickly by running fast when it was dark, but instead, they took the train like regular people. Sid realized it was a mistake when they arrived at the train station and Rose saw him. This was how they ended up traveling together. When they reached the Sacred Land, they walked around and looked at the goods sold on the streets. While they were walking, Rose saw her favorite writer giving autographs to those who bought his books. She lined up to get his autograph, and Sid noticed that the books displayed on the shelf were the same ones he had read in his previous life. He thought it might not be a coincidence and that maybe someone else like him had been reincarnated in the same world. He went to the line and found out it was Beta, who, like Gamma, used information she learned from Sid. Because Beta enjoyed literature, she wrote a story based on what she learned and published the books. Sid thought Beta was just getting ideas from what he shared with her, but it turned out she copied the whole story. Instead of an autograph, Beta included all the details about their next mission in the book. By nightfall, Alpha went to the cathedral and found the murdered body of Archbishop Drake. When other colleagues of the Archbishop arrived, they saw Alpha leaving and blamed her for what happened. They immediately ordered to close the entire cathedral to prevent Alpha from leaving the area. While Sid was eating ice cream and observing the area from above, he noticed someone running on the roof of a building. When the person descended, Sid attacked him, but he only hit the spoon used in the ice cream. Suddenly, someone attacked the man from above, and he died instantly. It turned out to be Epsilon, who then informed Sid about the current status of the mission, including the assassination of the Archbishop and its perpetrator. The next day, Sid decided to take a bath in the hot spring, but Alexia was also there and was shocked to see him. While Sid was relaxing, Alexia felt awkward and couldn't stand it anymore, so she talked to Sid. When Sid asked why she was in the Sacred Land, Alexia explained that she was a special guest for the goddess trial. She described it as a yearly ritual battle where ancient warriors woke up from the sanctuary and fought. Anyone who challenged them to a battle would face consequences. Alexia also mentioned the assassination of the Archbishop, and one of her goals in coming to the Sacred Land was to investigate it. Sid changed the subject and told her to stop staring at his Excalibur to hide her embarrassment. She described it more like a worm, so he told her not to judge it based on its appearance. Then he stood in front of Alexia, catching her off guard. Sid got out of the bath, leaving Alexia stunned. The day had arrived for the goddess trial, and many people attended, including Rose and Beta, also known as Natsum. While the incumbent Archbishop Nelson was speaking, Alexia remembered his refusal to conduct an audit on the late Archbishop. When Natsum's name was called, Alexia turned her attention to the girl next to her. Natum turned her head and glared at Alexia, making her annoyed. In her annoyance, she accidentally stepped on Natsum's foot, while Rose just smiled while watching. The battle began until Sid's name was called as one of the challengers, which surprised Alexia and Natsum. Sid thought about his possible choices once he entered the arena. First, he considered fighting as Sid, but if a strong ancient warrior came out, viewers might think he had strong powers. Second, he thought about running away, but if he did, the name of his school would be mentioned, and he might bring shame to the entire school for cowardice. Once he did this, the third option seemed better for him, so he fought his shadow. His opponent was Aurora, known as the Witch of Calamity. Since Alexia and Rose didn't know anything about her, Beta told them how powerful Aurora was. Beta begged Nelson to tell more about Aurora, so Nelson said she was the most powerful sorceress in history. He added that Shadow was unlucky to fight her because he surely couldn't harm Aurora. But Alexia didn't agree with Nelson. She believed if Aurora was Shadow's opponent, then Shadow's strength must be at Aurora's level. Aurora attacked first, but Shadow dodged all her attacks. He countered her and defeated Aurora with just one attack. Shadow left immediately after Aurora disappeared. The barrier in the arena cracked, and a door to another dimension formed, filling a large part of the city with red light. Even though Shadow was already outside, the door appeared in the arena. He realized it wouldn't stop following him no matter where he went. Thinking of the person he fought, he decided to enter the door, leading to another dimension. Nelson couldn't believe the door to the sanctuary appeared immediately in the middle of the goddess trial after Shadow's fight. He immediately informed people not to come near it and to leave the arena. Alpha, Delta, and Epsilon arrived with other Shadow Garden members. Alexia told them not to take any action until the door was closed, but Alpha and Delta approached the door and entered it immediately. Epsilon was going to take Nelson inside the sanctuary, but she was attacked by Executioner Venom. She dodged the attack and defeated the enemy, then took Nelson inside forcefully. When Beta entered the door, Alexia and Rose followed. According to legend, a devil's hand was sealed here after the hero Olivia defeated it. But Alpha and the Shadow Garden were more interested in learning about cults and devils. When they saw the statue of the hero Olivia, they realized it was a woman, unlike the public display of the statue in the city. It was also an elf, similar to Alpha and the other members of the Shadow Garden. Meanwhile, Sid went to a white room where he saw Aurora sitting. Sid freed her, and they decided to work together to get out of the sanctuary. Aurora told him that the sanctuary was a prison of memories from an ancient battle. If they could destroy its magical core, she would be freed. However, they couldn't use their magic there. After they came out and walked around the garden, they saw the young Aurora crying. The two of them approached her, and because Aurora was annoyed by her crying, she slapped her. When Alpha opened a door, they were brought to Olivier's memories, where they saw a facility where cults gathered orphan children and experimented on them. Most of the children couldn't handle the experiments and died because of them. Only a few women survived, and they were considered as being possessed. Olivier was one of the few who could handle the Diablo cells injected into them by the cultists. When Olivier gained the power of the devil, she was given a mission that everyone thought was to defeat the demon. But the truth was, Olivier could get more cells from it. She followed the order, thinking it would lead to a peaceful life for people. Even though Olivier cut off several parts from the demon, it didn't die. They used ancient artifacts to stop one of the demon's hands. They studied the blood from its flesh and created a medicine that gave great power to those who drank it. But what the cults really wanted was to create a medicine that not only gave extreme power but also prevented aging, granting eternal youth. This medicine was called the Beads of Diablo. There were two things to remember when taking this medicine. First, it had to be taken once a year to maintain its effect, and second, only 12 pieces of medicine could be produced each year. The high-ranking officials of the cult organization, known as the Knights of Rounds, consisted of 12 members, including Archbishop Nelson. Alpha added that in order to perfect the Beads of Diablo, the cults believed that people with blood similar to Olivier's were necessary for their plans. The Archbishop was about to transform when Delta stabbed him from behind. However, he survived and fought back, so they separated. Alpha and the others went to a white area where they faced Nelson and his clones, while Epsilon and the rest of the Shadow Garden stayed behind. Delta fought Nelson and noticed something strange, as did Alpha. As they approached the center of the sanctuary, their power was being drained, while Nelson became stronger. Despite this, Delta proved to be very strong, smashing Nelson's clones with an iron slab. Meanwhile, the other Shadow Garden members explored the facility and encountered a zombie-like figure, which transformed into the soul of a child and vanished. They found data on the cult's experiments, which would help with their investigation. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora were taken to the site of an ancient battle. There, they encountered the young Aurora again. When Aurora tried to attack her younger self, they were suddenly ambushed by the spirits of those who died in the battle. Fortunately, Sid managed to save her. the corpses that were lying down suddenly stood up and came towards them. They fought against them and managed to knock down most of them. Sid attacked the young Aurora with his sword. Then, they were transported to the center of the sanctuary. There, they saw a sword that could break the chains blocking the door. When Sid tried to pull out the sword, Aurora noticed something written below it, stating that only the descendants of the sword's owner could pull it out. Meanwhile, Delta continued to fight Nelson's other clones until they returned to the area where Olivier's statue was. Nelson freed Olivier while Epsilon's group informed Alpha that they had finished their investigation. They left the area immediately. Suddenly, Nelson received information that someone had entered the center of the sanctuary. While Sid and Aurora were talking, Nelson and Olivier arrived. Sid immediately noticed that Nelson's female companion resembled Alpha. Nelson ordered Olivier to kill Sid, and she began to attack him with incredible speed. Aurora stopped the fight and suggested finding another way for Sid to escape the sanctuary. However, Nelson interrupted, offering Aurora a deal. He promised to spare Sid's life if she cooperated with him. Aurora was considering his offer, but Sid interrupted them, expressing his offense at their conversation. He didn't like how they portrayed him as weak against Olivia and insisted he didn't need Aurora's help. He told Olivia to attack, and she stabbed him, but he smiled and opened one eye. He grabbed Olivia and bit her, causing her to disappear. As he approached Nelson, he released more clones of Olivier, some of which attacked Sid together. Sid easily defeated them, surprising Nelson. Sid explained that he just needed to strengthen his magic so it wouldn't be absorbed easily. Nelson got angry and ordered all the clones to attack Sid at once. Sid unleashed his power, impressing Alpha and the Shadow Garden members who were watching outside. Even the two princesses were shocked by his strength. Sid noticed the demon's broken arm bound in Aurora's face. Suddenly, he woke up next to her. As Aurora was about to touch him, her hand gradually disappeared before she vanished completely. She thanked Sid for the memories they shared. Meanwhile, as they walked back, Alexia had a lot on her mind about the Shadow Garden and the cults. She wanted to gather more information and offered Rose and Beta to join her plan, which they agreed to. Epsilon reported to Alpha about the sanctuary's complete destruction and the loss of the Holy Sword. She mentioned they couldn't recover a sample from its magical core. They also talked about Beta's mission to socialize with the princesses. Epsilon confirmed their theory that Aurora was also known as the Demon Diablo. Afterwards, Alpha asked Epsilon to prepare for their next mission, which was to the royal capital of Midgar. Meanwhile, Gamma discussed buying land in Madliad with an agent. When Nu entered and confirmed the presence of petroleum in the area, Gamma agreed to the agent's offer and purchased the land. Nu instructed others to start buying lands around the Nile River. Gamma informed Alpha about the upcoming visit of the Royal Chancellor of Ori to the royal capital of Midgar. While bathing, Alexia and her sister Iris discussed recent events, including the visit of the King of Oriana, an ally of their kingdom. Iris mentioned her plans to participate in the upcoming Busan festival to gain support from the people and the king. Although Alexia was concerned about the possible involvement of the cults and the Shadow Garden in the festival, Iris remained confident, despite knowing the Shadow Garden members, especially Shadow, possessed great power. If the cults and Shadow Gardens mess with the Busan festival, they need to be stopped. While Rose was training, she felt something odd in her chest and was surprised by what she found there. At the start of the Busan festival, participants from various places arrived. Meanwhile, Sid was atop a building, observing those interested in joining. He planned to participate too, pretending to be weak to surprise everyone. Sid asked Gamma for help in changing his appearance, so she brought out Beta's invention, which could completely alter a person's look. She suggested he take on the persona of a mundane man, and he agreed. After the session, they successfully copied the exact appearance of a mundane man. While Sid was outside, disguised as a mundane man, he encountered Anne Rose. She advised him not to participate in the Busan festival. Sid responded, telling her not to judge based on outward appearance, and then he left. Later, Sid was approached by Quentin, a regular at the festival, who didn't want to see weaklings like him. Quentin got angry when Sid claimed he was even weaker and began attacking him, unaware that Sid was just pretending to be hurt by Quentin's punches. When Anne Rose spoke up and asked Quentin to stop, he left. Anne Rose then approached Sid with the intention of healing his injuries, but he told her he didn't need it anymore. Before Sid left, they introduced themselves to each other. After registering for the contest, Sid met and talked to Skeletal, who planned to bet on the battles at the Busan Festival. Skeletal shared with Sid the potential winners of the tournament, including Iris and Anne Rose. Later, on his way home, Sid met Anne Rose again. She mentioned that her father introduced her to her fiancé, named Purvis Hat. Anne Rose then explained why she chose to wield a sword, despite the expectations of those around her. She shared that her interest in sword fighting began when she was saved by a man who also used a sword. Before leaving, Anne Rose asked Sid if he would trust her, to which Sid answered yes and gave her the food he bought. The next day, Skeletal took Sid to watch the battles and the preliminary rounds so he could gather data for potential participants to bet on. They met Golda, another participant, who offered to help Skeletal choose the strongest participants. Sid left for a while because Mundane Man was about to fight next, facing an opponent named Gonzalez. Golda mentioned that, based on his observations, Gonzalez had a power level of 1,364, while Mundane Man had only a power level of 33. When the fight started, everyone was surprised to see Gonzalez fall first from Mundane's quick attack. Not everyone noticed it, but Anne Rose did. Golda tried to explain his mistake, but he assured Skeletal that things would change because he would fight Mundane tomorrow. He told Skeletal that he should already know who to bet on. When Sid returned, Skeletal immediately asked him for money to bet on tomorrow's match because they were sure to win. While Sid was resting, Skeletal hurriedly went to his room to show him the contents of the newspaper. The news was about Rose allegedly stabbing her fiancé, Purvis Hat, and her whereabouts were still unknown. After learning about what happened to Rose, Alexia and Beta immediately met to discuss it. They found out that the Kingdom of Oriana did not want the Kingdom of Midgar to interfere in resolving the case. They were worried that Rose might face severe punishment because her fiancé was the son of a Duke of Oriana. However, they felt relieved knowing that she wouldn't face the death penalty because Rose was a princess. Alexia wanted to see and talk to Rose to hear her side of the story before Oriana soldiers captured her. Beta assured her that she would gather information. She also heard negative things about Rose's fiancé, so she would look into it as well. While Alexia would try to talk to Iris for advice, Beta ordered a Shadow Garden member to provide Alexia with information about Purvis Hat and the Oriana royal family. This would keep Alexia busy thinking about it and prevent her from acting immediately. Meanwhile, Rose was hiding in an underground tunnel because she thought the complex passages would be a good hiding spot. Sid and Skeletal watched the contest, and when Sid came downstairs, he met a woman who said she could smell an elf on him. She explained that she was looking for her sister's daughter and asked if he knew an elf who looked like her. When the woman removed her hood, Sid thought of Alpha, but he said he didn't know anyone who looked like her. Suddenly, she attacked Sid, who pretended to be shocked and scared. The woman thought he was strong but made a mistake and helped Sid up. He asked for her name, and she introduced herself as Beatrix. While Aunt Rose was watching the contest, Quentin approached her, and they talked about Mundane Man's fight the other day. They also mentioned Goldo, who would compete with Mundane on this day. According to Aunt Rose, Go was known as the unbeaten legend because he always backed out of fights when he realized his opponent was stronger than him. They thought he had a strong sense of the participants' abilities, which might be why he didn't back down from Mundane Man. When the fight started, Goldo immediately attacked, but Mundane Man was able to dodge it. Goldo realized what could happen if he continued and retreated. Quentin didn't see what Mundane did, but Anne Rose heard a snap on Mundane's neck. Goldo was very angry because Mundane didn't seem bothered by missing the chance to defeat him. Goldo used the golden dragon blade to finish off Mundane, but when he got close, Mundane sneezed and pushed him back. Because of this, Mundane won, surprising everyone. Anne Rose tried to explain that maybe Mundane wasn't used to Goldo's shiny armor, so he sneezed. Quentin didn't believe this and said he would face Mundane in the preliminary finals if Mundane kept winning. Meanwhile, Iris talked to Perv Asshat and asked if he was sure he didn't need extra security. Perv Asshat understood what Iris was doing because of Alexia's abduction. While the King of Oriana kept mentioning to follow Perv Asshat's orders, Iris found his words annoying. In the preliminary finals, Mundane quickly defeated Quinton, earning a spot in the main tournament. He would face Anne Rose in the first round. Viewers were unsure whether to bet on Mundane or not. Meanwhile, Rose was spotted by those searching for her and was forced to fight them. Although she hit the guards with her sword, she made sure not to hit vital areas. She ran away when more people approached and continued to chase her. While Sid thought about the upcoming contest, Scout visited him to show a reward for anyone who could catch or provide information about Rose's whereabouts. Scout wanted them to do it to claim the reward. When Sid saw Claire entering the house, he quickly got dressed and pulled Skeletal out to start their operation to find Rose. Skeletal didn't know that this was just a way for Sid to pass the time while his sister was still in a bad mood. Then, he heard the sound of a piano and remembered his past life as a good pianist too. While listening to it, he realized that it was his favorite Moonlight Sonata. He immediately wondered why anyone in this world knew the Moonlight Sonata, so he also thought that the person playing it might be reincarnated like him. When he entered the building, it was just Epsilon who was playing the piano. She mentioned that she had received an award from the royal family because of her piano performance. She informed Sid that she was also invited by the Kingdom of Oriana, which was an opportunity for her to balance her career as a pianist and her duties as a member of the Shadow Garden. Sid asked her if she knew anything about Rose's whereabouts, but Epsilon didn't have much information except that Rose was hiding in an underground tunnel. Sid said goodbye and left to continue the search. Meanwhile, Bat and Alexia met to discuss their search for Rose. Alexia mentioned what Iris said about noticing something strange about the King of Oriana when her sister went to see him. Beta asked her where the stairs would lead them, and Alexia answered that they would lead to the underground tunnel where they would try to find Rose. Rose was feeling weak from fighting off those who wanted to capture her. At that moment, she remembered seeing her father acting strangely in their palace. She realized that Perv and other officials in the kingdom were involved in causing this change in her father. Out of anger, she attacked Perv and injured him, but then she realized she fell into their trap so they could arrest her. She knew Perv was a member of the cult, and its other members were scattered in the Kingdom of Oriana. Feeling hopeless and considering giving up, Rose remembered Sid telling her that he trusted her. Suddenly, she felt intense pain in her chest because of a curse on her body. When she heard the Moonlight Sonata, she stood up and continued walking. To her surprise, she saw Shadow playing the piano, and she applauded the beautiful music. Shadow asked her about her plans, and Rose sadly replied that she wanted to protect her loved ones but felt powerless in her current situation. Hearing this, Shadow decided to give her power, and the curse on her body disappeared. Just as Rose received the power, Shadow vanished. Soon after, those chasing her appeared to attack her, but she tried the power that Shadow gave her. Meanwhile, Alexia sensed the great power somewhere and hurried to where it was. There, she saw Rose walking towards them, so they approached her. Alexia wanted to know why Rose attacked Perv, but Rose didn't want to say because she didn't want them to get involved. Alexia got angry and attacked Rose, starting a fight between them. Later, Beta saw Rose carrying the unconscious Alexia. She left Alexia with Beta before leaving. Beta told Rose that she wouldn't stop her from doing what she needed to do and wished her success. Rose left immediately after that. When Sid returned to his lodging, Claire was still there waiting for him. Claire was angry and choked him, showing her worsening anger. She gave Sid a ticket for the Busan festival so he could watch the fights. She explained that she would be representing their school instead of Rose. One day, Alexia went to see Beta in her office, but Beta had already left. She found an envelope containing information about the Kingdom of Oriana that Beta had left for her. Meanwhile, the main tournament of the Busan festival had started. Sid was surprised to find out that the ticket Claire gave him was a VIP ticket. He also saw Iris there, and they sat together. Iris apologized to Sid for mistaking him for Alexia's disappearance, which was Xenon's doing. They talked about Alexia, and Sid told Iris about what she did to him before. Iris mentioned that she wanted to see someone at the festival, the elf swordmaster called the war goddess, Beatrix, who had won the festival before. It was possible that Beatrix was somewhere in the area. Sid suddenly remembered the elf who looked like Alpha. He excused himself briefly because his match was about to be announced. While walking, he felt a strong power, which turned out to be Beatrix. She asked him again if he had seen anyone who looked like her. Beatrix thought she might find what she was looking for among the people attending the contest. Meanwhile, Perv approached Iris, and they talked about the ongoing fight between Rose and Mundane Man. Iris mentioned that even though Mundane looked weak, she wasn't sure Rose would win. Rose recalled Mundane's past battles and knew he hadn't used his full strength yet. When the fight started, Rose attacked immediately, but Mundane blocked and avoided her attacks. After a while, Mundane began to attack, surprising Rose with his speed. She prepared to counter his next move, but he calculated the right distance to avoid her counterattack. This led to Rose's defeat, and Mundane won the fight. Iris was impressed by Mundane's victory but couldn't believe how he managed it. They also noticed his unique sword-holding style. Since Iris's next fight was against Mundane, she felt he was still hiding something but didn't want to lose. After Iris left, Perv also left and ordered his staff to find out more about Mundane because he suspected he was from the underworld. Meanwhile, Aunt Rose approached Mundane to congratulate him on winning their match. She invited him to go with her to Velgelta, but he declined, saying he might not fit in there. After Iris defeated her opponent, she saw Beatrix leaving the arena, so she followed her. When she caught up to Beatrix in the plaza, Beatrix offered her some food. The next day, Sid returned to the VIP area to watch the contest. Iris also arrived to watch, and a few minutes later, they saw Beatrix being stopped from entering by the guards. Iris intervened and informed the guards that she was the one who invited Beatrix. The guards were surprised to learn that this woman was Beatrix. Meanwhile, Perv continued to give Rose's father the medicine so they could control him easily. Together with the King of Midgar, they would also watch the contest. Perv's staff had finished searching for Mundane's background but failed to get any information. This confirmed his suspicion that Mundane might actually be from the underworld. As they passed in front of Beatrix, she remarked to him that he smelled bad. In Perv's anger, he ordered her out of the arena. However, when Iris mentioned Beatrix's name, he was surprised and let it go. He wondered why Beatrix was there and considered killing her too, but he didn't know how to do it because he knew she was more skilled than Iris. Claire's fight was over, and next was the fight between Mundane and Iris. When the fight started, Iris felt strange as Mundane attacked her, causing her to retreat immediately. She imagined being constantly hit by Mundane's attacks. When Rose arrived at the Busan Festival arena, she saw the dead bodies of the cultists on the floor. Then, Beta and other Shadow Garden members showed up and encouraged her to continue with her plans. Iris noticed that with every slight movement of Mundane's arm, she felt like she was being attacked. The audience began to notice Iris's reaction and thought she was scared. This made her angry, so she released her intense power and rushed at Mundane. When she got close to him, she noticed that he wasn't holding his sword anymore. Mundane dodged her attack and managed to knock her down. With his sword pointed at her, and since her sword was also destroyed, Mundane was declared the winner of the fight. The King of Midgar left immediately, and Perv became worried about what he saw. Meanwhile, Beatrix was amazed at Mundane's technique and expressed her desire to fight him. Suddenly, Rose appeared and confronted Perv and his father. She apologized to her father for her actions, which surprised Perv. Then, Rose suddenly attacked, but Perv immediately used her father as a shield, causing him to be stabbed instead. After her father's death, Rose intended to end her own life, but Perv ordered his men to stop her. Suddenly, Mundane intervened and killed Perv's guards. Rose remembered the man who saved her when she was young and inspired her to wield a sword. After Mundane transformed back into shadow, Rose recognized him as the stylish bandit slayer. She recounted the tale of when she first encountered the stylish bandit slayer. She was impressed by Shadow's efforts to fight evil, but felt ashamed because she had considered ending her own life to escape pain. However, Shadow reassured her that her battle wasn't finished yet. As she glanced at her father lying on the ground, she fled, with Shadow stopping Perv from pursuing her. When Perv called for his guards, they found that Beta and the others had already defeated them. Suddenly, Beatrix attacked Shadow, causing significant damage to the building with the force of her blow. Perv quickly left the scene as their fight continued on top of a building. Shadow disappeared and surprised Beatrix with his speed. Iris arrived with a mythal blade and proposed they team up against him. Despite using the power of the mythal blade twice, Shadow dodged both attacks. Beatrix continued to fight him. Meanwhile, Rose encountered Alpha. Alpha offered Rose a choice: fight alone to save the kingdom of Oriana or cooperate with the Shadow Garden. Feeling that the Shadow Garden could help her save Oriana, Rose chose to cooperate. Back in the fight, Shadow and Beatrix battled throughout different parts of the city. Iris urged Beatrix to attack Shadow while they worked together, but their plan failed due to Shadow's strength and speed, resulting in both of them being beaten. When Iris and Beatrix stood up, Shadow unleashed a powerful force that stunned them both. As they watched, the entire city suddenly illuminated, and then Shadow vanished from their sight. Iris was so upset by the outcome of the fight that she burst into tears, while Beatrix decided to leave Midgar even though she hadn't found her niece yet. Beta noted that Shadow had succeeded in keeping Midgar occupied in their search for him, which meant Midgar wouldn't get involved in the chaos in the Oriana Kingdom. A few days later, students began returning to school, and Shadow continued to pretend to be an ordinary and weak student. Meanwhile, Alpha took Rose and they headed straight to the ancient capital, Alexandria, where the Shadow Garden's hideout was located. Alpha instructed Landa to train Rose until she unlocked her true abilities. Landa informed their two members that Rose would be joining their group. Later, the Shadow Garden had a meeting to discuss the progress of their plans. Beta informed Shadow that since the incident at the Busan Festival, they hadn't noticed any activity from the Cult of Diablos or the Fenrir sect, which was good news for their plan in the Oriana Kingdom. Eta and Zeta reported an increase in monetary resources being sent to the lawless city, and they also noticed that the color of the moon turned red. This reminded them of the tragedy that occurred thousands of years ago, raising concerns that not only the lawless city but also neighboring kingdoms might be affected if the legend was true. Shadow decided to go to the lawless city to handle some matters there. Meanwhile, Goldie and Quentin were in the lawless city, keeping an eye on the Crimson Tower, which belonged to Blood Queen Elizabeth, one of the three leaders of the city. They planned to confront the Blood Queen, but a guard known as the White Devil warned them that they'd lose their arms if they persisted. Ignoring the warning, Goldie and Quentin refused to back down, prompting the White Devil to fight them. The next day, Sid arrived in the city, brought there by Claire. He remembered Claire's victory in the Busan Festival and her decision to go to the lawless city to fight vampires. She also persuaded him to come along to enhance his reputation, as she planned to enlist him in Midgar's Night Order after he graduated. Later, Claire was offered some prisoners to be her slaves, including Goldie and Quentin. Sid noticed the familiar-looking beaten prisoners. In the afternoon, Claire left Sid alone, and feeling bored, he decided to explore the city. Pickpockets attempted to steal money from him, but Sid ended up making more money instead. While walking through an alley, he witnessed 3 men attacking a ghoul. However, when the red moon reappeared, the ghoul suddenly grew stronger and fought back against its attackers. When the ghoul was getting close to Sid, an old vampire hunter named Mary happened to pass by and quickly killed the ghoul. Mary then said some kind words to Sid, which he appreciated and couldn't forget. Meanwhile, Claire was very angry when she found out that her brother wasn't at the inn. Suddenly, a man ran out of another room, being chased by a ghoul. Claire rushed to save him. Skeletal and Potato were also in the area to see the red light district, but they were suddenly attacked by ghouls from behind. They screamed, catching the attention of a woman named Marie in another room. Fortunately, Shadow arrived to rescue her. After saving Marie, Shadow told her about what Mary had said to him and then left. Mary's friend entered the room and was surprised to see the ghoul on the floor. When she learned that Shadow had saved Marie, she realized how dangerous Shadow could be. However, she still believed that Shadow wasn't a bad person and decided to leave the place too. While Claire was searching for Sid, Mary approached her because she found out that she was also looking for a man who was similar to the 2 men she had met earlier. Mary even mentioned that she saw one of them smiling while facing a ghoul. Claire became more interested in the second person Mary mentioned, but Mary informed her that the followers of the Blood Queen had taken him to the Crimson Tower. Mary had a feeling that they might use him as a sacrifice to awaken the Blood Queen. They knew that with the red moon, there was a good chance of waking her. Since Mary was targeting the Blood Queen, they decided to team up. Meanwhile, Claudia and the other members of the Dark Knight Association were trying to fend off the ghouls. Suddenly, their colleagues abandoned them, leaving them vulnerable to the ghouls. Just when things looked grim, Shadow appeared to save them. He also shared what Marie had told him. At the top of the Crimson Tower, a member of the Blood Queen's group informed Crimson that the sacrifice preparation was almost done. However, they still had a few obstacles: Yukim from the White Tower and Juggernaut from the Black Tower. There was also another fighter, Shadow, who had been taking down ghouls. When Yukim learned that Shadow had saved her companions, she decided to leave. The White Devil had been watching Yukim and Juggernaut but didn't dare to fight them. However, seeing Shadow, he thought Shadow was weaker and attacked him. Unfortunately for the White Devil, this was a fatal mistake that led to his demise. Meanwhile, Beta was inside the Crimson Tower, gathering information in the library. After a while, Claire and Mary arrived. Beta had planned to hide from anyone who saw her, but she realized she couldn't do it anymore when Mary confirmed that Beta wasn't a vampire. Mary also noticed that they weren't alone in the room. With them were number 664, number 665, and Rose, also known as number 666 in the Shadow Garden. Before leaving, they asked Beta what they were doing in the library. Beta explained they were researching the possessed and intended to take a blood sample from the progenitor vampire. Mary didn't like what Beta said because it was disrespectful to the progenitor vampire. Claire suggested they leave to save Sid. When Rose tried to join the conversation, Beta quickly stopped her. As they were leaving, Beta asked Mary about the Haven, which annoyed her. Claire noticed this, so when they encountered a vampire, she asked Mary about it. Claire had felt earlier that Mary was siding with the vampires. Mary didn't give a clear answer about the Haven, and suddenly they felt a tremor. They saw Juggernaut in the distance, eliminating the vampires. One by one, the powerful vampires in the Crimson Tower were taken down. After seeing how strong Juggernaut was, they tried to avoid him. But Juggernaut noticed them and attacked Claire first. Mary was also hit by him. When Claire saw Mary's injuries, she got worried. In that moment, Mary couldn't resist drinking Claire's blood, revealing that she was also a vampire. After drinking blood, Mary gained new strength and attacked Juggernaut, but it wasn't enough to defeat him. Just as Juggernaut was about to attack Claire again, Shadow arrived and kicked him away. Then, Mary apologized to Claire for drinking her blood. She explained her past and the truth about the Blood Queen. Mary talked about a time when humans and vampires were enemies, but the Blood Queen wanted to live peacefully with humans, so she stopped drinking blood. Other vampires followed her lead, losing their powers gradually. They could even go out in the sunlight until the red moon appeared. When the Blood Queen craved blood again, Crimson provided it, causing their haven to collapse. Elizabeth tried to kill the Blood Queen, but Crimson attacked her instead, taking Elizabeth's body. She knew Crimson had a plan for the Blood Queen. When Crimson got Elizabeth's heart, he used it in a ritual with a human sacrifice. But then Shadow suddenly attacked, causing its body to be torn apart. Shadow was disappointed because he didn't find the ultimate boss he was looking for. He decided to search downstairs. What he didn't know was that the person he was looking for was about to come to life. When Mary and Claire arrived, the Blood Queen immediately attacked Claire. Beta quickly rushed to help and they managed to rescue Claire. Beta assigned number 664 to look after Claire, and together, they fought Elizabeth. But no matter how hard they tried, their attacks didn't affect the Blood Queen. Then Juggernaut came and punched Elizabeth, but it didn't work either. Elizabeth attacked back, causing serious injuries to most of them. Beta noticed that Elizabeth was absorbing their blood to heal herself and become stronger. Just as Beta was about to attack again, something unexpected happened. Claire was affected by a strange power, just like Beta and the other shadows. When Claire woke up, she was in the infirmary with a witch named Aurora. Aurora explained Claire's situation and told her about someone who could help cure her. She mentioned that there were 2 types of blood inside Claire's body, and a mark appeared on her hand. Before Aurora emerged from the room, she introduced herself to Claire and explained that she was helping her because of Shadow. This was the moment when Aurora's persona took control of Claire's body, surprising Beta. Aurora engaged in combat with Elizabeth. However, when she attempted to use atomic magic, Claire's body couldn't handle the power, knowing that Shadow was on his way. Aurora returned control of Claire's body to her, intending to give Shadow some time. When Shadow arrived, he immediately began exchanging blows with Elizabeth. During their fight, the gold coins Shadow had gathered earlier were scattered around. Shadow didn't want to run out of coins, so he engaged in close combat with Elizabeth. They continued exchanging sword strikes until Shadow decided to use the restorative atomic magic, which returned the ghouls in the city to normal. With Elizabeth defeated and Claire safe, Beta left with her companions. Sid escorted Claire back to the inn, where she contemplated the mark on her hand. The next day, they decided to return to Midgar. Meanwhile, Potato, Skeletal, Goldie, and Quentin, grateful to be alive, also made their way back. Claire expressed her desire to understand the power in her hand. One night, Sid transformed into Shadow and boarded a train at Yukime's invitation, as she wanted to form an alliance. Meanwhile, a group of men obstructed the train that was being loaded with products by the Mitsugoshi Company. According to them, their boss named Garter wanted to stop the Mitsugoshi Company's ongoing success. Little did they know, the women they were facing were members of the Shadow Garden. They were surprised to see Alpha on the roof of the train. By the time they realized who they were fighting against, it was too late, and they were all defeated by the members of the Shadow Garden. Alpha knew that people from the underworld connected to the cult of devils would start showing up, and the battle would surely begin soon. The next day, while Sid was talking to Skeletal and Potato, he noticed that the number of people wearing formal suits seemed to be increasing. He thought it might be because of what they had learned from him. At night, he met with Yukime again, not as Shadow but as John Smith, a super-elite secret agent. They discussed Garter's demand to call for a meeting with the major corporate alliance to counter Mitsugoshi. However, according to Yukime, their plan would not change. She also informed him about Getan, who was behind the major corporate alliance. She didn't want Shadow to do something to Getan because she wanted to be the one to deal with him. One day, while Sid was with Skeletal, he noticed the money, which was new to his eyes. He learned that it was from the major corporate alliance and also the reason why the sales development boosted. Today, when Potato showed the money they were using before, Sid found out that it was from Mitsugoshi Bank. That's when he learned that Alpha had already set up a bank. He suddenly remembered what he used to say to them. When they were young, it took him a while to notice the difference between the two paper bills. The Mitsugoshi money had different colors, while the MCA money seemed to look like a photocopy. For this reason, he thought of a plan. So, he immediately left with Poe's money. In the evening, he talked to Yukime again to tell her the plan he had in mind, called credit creation. He showed Yukime the two paper bills, and she immediately noticed that MCA money was easier to fake. Although she thought that the authorities could easily track down the person who would spread fake money, she also suspected that this might be Shadow's plan all along. If people find out that the money they were holding was possibly fake, it would cause them to panic. Shadow did not expect this from her. While Yukime was thrilled because she thought that Shadow was testing her, one night some members of the Shadow Garden attacked the staff of Garter. While Sid was eating outside, he thought that he was giving food to a dog, but it turned out to be Delta who wanted more food from him. After they ate, Sid found out that Alpha was ordering Delta to get rid of the bandits. Since she also mentioned that she liked what she was doing, Delta forced him to go with her. The next day, Getan and Garter found out that one of their staff had been murdered the other night. Because of this, Getan decided to use his elite assassins called the Clovers. That night, they immediately encountered Shadow and Delta. It turned out that one of the members of the Clovers was Delta's brother Zabra. Even though Delta knew that he was her brother, she still killed him because it was said that being weak was a shame to their family bloodline. In addition to this, she also had thousands of siblings because their father was a chief, which is why he had many wives. When Garter found out what happened to Zabra, he immediately informed Getan about it. Garter suggested a temporary retreat and re-evaluate first, but Getan disagreed with this. Getan planned to summon the three remaining Clovers together to boost their offense against Mitsugoshi. After Garter left, that was when Getan realized that this was probably the reason why the cult of Diablos considered Mitsugoshi a threat. The three members of the Clovers immediately took action, but when they arrived at the Mitsugoshi Company building, Nu found out about it immediately. They knew that these were Getten's men because they were currently investigating them as well. Alpha assigned Nu to take care of them, but Gamma volunteered to face the intruders. Because of this, Alpha combined with Omega and she with Gamma. When they met the Clovers, Gamma introduced herself to them as the manager named Luna because she knew that she was their target. Then, it was here that Omega and she suddenly attacked the two Clovers. Gamma confronted the remaining Clover, who introduced himself as Leaf, one of the strongest among the Clovers. When Gamma attacked him, she noticed his footwork, which was similar to the Western League Tenroi style of fencing. The opponent did not expect that Gamma would know this right away, so he hoped that she would find a way to counter his style. But Gamma still did the same attack. He was able to hit her in the head, but he was surprised that her skull was so hard. After being hurt from that attack, Gamma decided to use her magical energy from the power of each attack that she unleashed. It also caused damage to the building. When she rushed with one of her strongest attacks, she accidentally tripped, causing massive damage to the building. The enemy realized that he would not be able to defeat Gamma, so he planned to retreat with his companions. But it turned out that Chi had already beaten his two colleagues. When Gamma got up, she rushed for another attack, but the enemy quickly ran away. Gamma tripped again, but this time her sword hit the enemy just in time. The next morning, Garter and Gettan were wondering why the Clovers had not yet returned. They also lost contact with the lookout team as well as with the reinforcements they sent. Gettan thought that this might be the right opportunity for him to show his power. Meanwhile, Sid and Alexia were training because she wanted to get stronger. She did not want the same thing to happen again, where she could not do anything for her friend Rose because of her weakness. Even her sister was also in her training to improve herself, and she knew that she would be left behind if she did not do anything. When Shadow and Yukime met again, she presented the fake paper bill that they made. Yukime was able to copy the money perfectly, so the original money they used looked fake. They made their deal and decided to begin the distribution of this money immediately. Yukime left it to Shadow, but she reminded him again that she should be the one to take care of Gettan. She wanted revenge because Gettan massacred her mother, friends, and fellow villagers. When the distribution of fake money started, Gamma also learned about it. Alpha knew that this would also affect the Mitsugoshi Company, but she also thought that it was possible for the Mitsugoshi Corporate Alliance, MCA, to do this thing. She assigned Gamma to find out where the fake money was coming from. A few hours later, Garter also found out about it after their cashiers discovered it in one of their corporate stores. Because of this, Gettan also assigned Garter to find out where it was coming from. Gettan also had a plan to spread fake money to bankrupt MCA and Mitsugoshi Company. This was the mission given to him by the cult of Diablos. But it would only happen if they recovered all the assets of the cult hidden in the MCA. But from what was happening in the current situation, and if the spread of counterfeit money was neglected, the cult might lose even more. At night, Rose and her companion traced a train carrying fake money. When they entered it, they were surprised that they did not see anyone guarding it. But when Rose noticed the wire, that was when number 664 and number 665 fell into the trap. They saw John Smith, who was the one who did it. Rose rushed to him, but she also could not escape the wires. Shadow thought that it was too early for them to know about his disguise, so he threw them out of the train. Rose was about to try to chase the train, but number 664 immediately stopped her because they did not have a proper plan and they might just fall into the trap again. Rose remembered what John Smith had done to them and wondered why she felt so weak. They immediately informed Alpha about what happened on their mission. Rose then told Alpha that John Smith was skilled in fighting and she thought he was as strong as the Seven Shadows. She wanted to express her desire to fight him again, but number 664 took her out of the room. After a while, Alpha decided to send Delta to confront John Smith. One night, while Shadow was delivering counterfeit money to Midgar, he saw Delta chasing the train he was riding. When she entered the train, she quickly attacked him. They fought until Delta destroyed the wagon they were in. Shadow used the debris to his advantage and approached Delta. She sensed something familiar and realized he was Shadow. John Smith admitted it and explained that he had a secret mission, so he pretended to be John Smith. He then gave her a new mission, as per the rules of the Shadow Garden, prioritizing it over other tasks. Despite Alpha's orders, Delta followed Shadow's instructions and headed to the lawless city to find and kill someone named Juggernaut. The next morning, Gamma spoke to Alpha about what they found at the scene of the fight between Delta and John Smith. Gamma knew that Delta would not disobey Alpha's orders. They thought that Delta might have lost the fight. Alpha ordered them to keep looking for Delta and do their best to find her. When Getan found out about John Smith, he ordered Garter to set up a checkpoint and inspect everyone entering and leaving the royal capital. When news of the MCA checkpoint spread, Iris also heard about it. She met Alexia, who was studying various subjects, including politics and economics, but Alexia assured her that she hadn't neglected her sword training. In the evening, Beta updated Shadow about the ongoing spread of fake currency and the unauthorized MCA checkpoint, which was negatively affecting the marketplace. Beta also informed him about Delta, which made Shadow uneasy. To reassure her, he said Delta might be in a faraway place. Before leaving, he gave her a paper with a code written on it, telling her that if she understood its meaning, he would share what he knew. A few hours later, Shadow delivered counterfeit money to Midgar again. When Yukim's staff informed him they were close to the checkpoint, he got off the train to deal with those blocking them. However, he encountered Alpha waiting for him. They fought, and while Alpha analyzed Shadow's movements, she realized he was Shadow. She asked where Delta was, but Shadow only said he sent her far away, which Alpha couldn't accept. She started to think that she wasn't useful to him anymore, so he started doing missions alone. This hurt Alpha because she always wanted to support him since he saved her life. He told her that they would understand him when everything was over. Then, he used force to make Alpha stay behind. When he got to Midgar, he and Yukim started to decrease the MCA fund. After finishing the job, Yukim told him about her past with Getan, who happened to be her fiancé. But their happy moment turned into a nightmare when their village was burned down, and she found her mother dead. She discovered that Getan did it after her mother refused to submit to the cult. Getan also tried to make her take a pill, and when she refused, he attacked her. Since then, she worked hard until she reached the lawless city and gained wealth. But she made it clear that her true desire was to find Getan and get revenge on him. Meanwhile, due to the news about counterfeit money spreading, many shops stopped accepting paper money. When Getan and Garter talked again, they still couldn't find out which factory was producing the fake money. But Getan said he found out who was behind it, Yukim, which surprised Garter. Shortly after, Getan heard the bell rung by Yukim, so he ordered to stop the carriage. Meanwhile, Alpha was sulking because of what Shadow did to her. She thought that Shadow had abandoned them because they couldn't meet his expectations. When Gamma heard what Alpha said, she started crying because she was sad. Then, Nu came into the room to tell them that they found evidence showing that Getan was actually conducting an operation for the Diablos cult. They also found out that he planned to spread fake money to bring down the Mitsugoshi Corporation. This made Alpha realize that Shadow spread the fake money because he already knew what Getan was planning. Suddenly, Beta came to show them a message. She managed to figure out the code that Shadow gave her the other night. After this discovery, they understood why Shadow was doing missions alone. The letter also said where he hid the gold coins they got from MCA. As for Delta, she suddenly appeared because she was worried that Alpha might scold her. After Getan got off the carriage, he went to Yukim's location. They started to fight, but Yukim was strong and was winning. When Yukim was about to leave, Getan decided to make himself stronger, so he took a pill. Because of this, Yukim couldn't avoid getting surprised attacked by him. He was about to kill her when someone suddenly attacked him. It was Shadow. When Getan got up, they fought, but even though Getan had extra power from the pill, it wasn't enough to match Shadow's strength. He was about to take more pills, but Shadow quickly attacked to stop him. Shadow punched him until he remembered that Shadow might also be the person who attacked him before, which caused him to lose his sight. After Shadow beat him, he went to Yukim to heal her wound. While Shadow was healing Yukim's wound, she remembered a day years ago when a man also healed her. She felt that Shadow was that person, so she thanked him for saving her. Meanwhile, Iris arrested Getan after what he did in the kingdom of Midgar. When Yukime returned to where they stored the gold coins, she found they were gone. Suddenly, Alpha appeared, and they realized it was Alpha's group who took the gold coins. Alpha gave a letter to Yukime, which they believed was Getten's letter. Alpha also told them who they were and their purpose. She offered Yukime to continue the alliance with them to fight the Diablos cult, and Yukime accepted without hesitation. One day, Skeletal and Potato visited Sid to invite him and search for beautiful girls, but Sid wasn't there. They found 6 VIP tickets for the grand opening of Mitsugoshi Hot Springs land on Sid's table. They knew these tickets were hard to get, even for the rich. They had an idea to use the tickets to attract ladies, so they decided to invite beautiful Mitsugoshi employees. They went to Mitsugoshi, and when Nu saw the tickets, she took them to ask why they had them. Afraid of Nu, they said the tickets were from Sid. Nu wondered why their master gave the tickets to his classmates, so she decided to inform the 7 shadows about it. The 7 shadows gathered to discuss the situation. Since some of them didn't know about the Mitsugoshi Hot Springs land, ETA reminded them how they obtained it after defeating a group of cultists. They learned about the dragon's tears or golden tears. Shadow assigned them all to dig the area while he had another mission to complete. One day, ETA found a hot spring, and they decided to build the Mitsugoshi Hot Springs land. Their conversation then turned to the 6 tickets. The 7 shadows decided to choose 3 of them to go on the date with their master. They played rock paper scissors to decide. Delta, Beta, and Zeta won, but the girls were surprised that Sid wasn't with Skeletal and Potato. However, they were relieved when Skeletal and Potato said Sid would be late. While they waited for Sid, they decided to have fun. However, Skeletal and Potato didn't seem to enjoy the day with the girls. Later, ETA detected an abnormal magical signature underground in the hot spring, so they all went to investigate. Z couldn't stop thinking about the dragon tears, and luckily Lambda had prepared a shadow play about the friendship between a princess and a dragon. In the play, there was a war in the princess's kingdom, and when the dragon searched for her, she was already weak and fighting for her life. After the princess cried, the dragons also shed tears, covering the entire kingdom in tears. Meanwhile, Skeletal and Potato were trying to peek at the girls, unaware of traps set for peeping toms like them. When Potato's tears fell into the water, the hot spring reacted quickly, though its effect was weak. They thought of using Beta's tears because she claimed to be a princess. They found a way to make her cry, and when her tears fell into the hot spring, a water dragon appeared. The 7 shadows quickly dressed to fight the dragon and ensure the safety of the guests. They attacked the dragon together, and after Alpha's attack, they successfully defeated it. After the fight, they saw the golden tears mentioned in the legend. A golden dragon suddenly approached Beta and then slowly disappeared. Alpha thought that Shadow might have wanted to save this dragon's soul. They took this opportunity to make the appearance of the dragon a special event so they could sell their grand opening merchandise. A few days later, while Sid was in Oriana, he visited Marie's tavern. Number 664 and number 665 were also there, while Rose was resting in the room. Rose had a dream about her father telling her that he would never forgive her, which woke her up. Then she remembered that their next mission was about to begin, so she got ready. When they came out, number 664 informed them that number 559 would lead them on this mission. Number 559 was familiar to them. After defeating number 89, she earned the right to challenge the named numbers. At night, they went to the first ruin, and number 559 was already there. Since they didn't know the full details of their mission yet, number 559 explained it to them. They had to find out what the Diablos cult was currently planning. She asked Rose for her opinion on why she was included in the mission. Rose mentioned she was familiar with the place, but number 559 revealed that she requested to include Rose in this mission. She knew Rose's power came from Shadow himself, which amazed number 664 and 665. Number 559 explained that only the 7 shadows had power directly from Shadow, while the others received their powers from the 7 shadows. However, she mentioned she was similar to Rose because her power also came from Shadow. A few moments later, they noticed members of the Diablos cult taking action. They moved closer and saw Qua using a key card on a pedestal. Then, Rose's mother, the Queen of Oriana, appeared, surprising Rose. When she placed her hand on the glyph, the pedestal opened, revealing Freya's Ring of Legend. After witnessing this, number 559 asked them to prepare for battle, which caught the girls off guard. They needed to obtain this ring because it was said to be a key. When number 559 attacked the queen, Rose quickly intervened. Upon seeing Rose, Kwa was relieved as they no longer needed to search for her. Since Rose refused to move, number 559 had to punch her. This made number 559 consider Rose a traitor, and their fight with Quad began. Because of the number of opponents, they managed to get Rose. This information quickly reached Gamma, who decided it was the right time to send reinforcements. Gamma instructed Lambda to speed up the organization of their army. In Rose's case, they decided to let Pervashak handle her for the meantime. When Sid woke up, he saw the news about Rose's return to the palace. This reminded him of what happened to the former king and made him wonder why Rose killed his father. Thinking back on their last conversation before the incident, Sid also speculated that Rose might want to become the supreme tyrant. This idea filled his mind once again, hinting at what could happen if Rose achieved this. Suddenly, 3 men came to extort money from Marie again. Sid pretended to intervene, but ended up getting beaten by the men. Although they took the rest of Marie's money, she was still grateful to Sid. Unbeknownst to her, Sid had intentionally allowed himself to be beaten. Later that night, Sid went to the hideout of the men who beat him. One of them continued to speak, unaware that his colleagues had already been killed. When he realized this, he was unable to fight back as Sid swiftly ended his life. Sid then brought the gold coins to the tavern, where Marie noticed them. When she came out, she was surprised to see the gold coins and also caught sight of Shadow, making her think he was watching her. 3 days and nights went by, but number 559 was still battling Quad's group. Quad couldn't believe that she had taken out the first group who were with him. However, as she grew weaker, Quad managed to injure her. Just when she was about to be defeated, she noticed Shadow up in the sky. Shadow gave her strength, allowing her to defeat Quad with just one powerful attack. Numbers 664 and 665 were amazed at how quickly their injuries healed when Shadow arrived. Number 559 then informed Shadow about Rose's alleged betrayal in the Shadow Garden. Number 664 disagreed, knowing that Rose acted because her mother was present. While number 559 continued speaking, a newspaper fell on Shadow, revealing that Rose was getting married to Purva's hat. Shadow couldn't accept this because it would make what Rose did to her father pointless, and his expectations would not be fulfilled. He decided he needed to see Rose because he wanted her to rule the Oriana kingdom. The next morning, Omega delivered reinforcements, and they discussed Rose's role as an instructor. Lambda couldn't forgive Rose for what she had done, but Omega reminded her that even the 7 shadows weren't authorized to punish Rose. Lambda realized it was up to Shadow to handle the situation, knowing that Shadow could be merciless towards those who opposed the Shadow Garden. Meanwhile, as Sid pondered what to say to Rose, Epsilon approached him. It turned out she was invited to perform in front of Pervashat, and her timing was perfect. Since Sid managed to enter the royal palace without any trouble, Epsilon told him that other members were already inside, keeping an eye on things. Pervashat noticed them and approached Greek Epsilon, known to them as Cheyenne. When Pervashat spotted Sid, Epsilon introduced him as her student. However, Pervashat stated that they wouldn't allow additional people into the palace, even if they were invited guests' companions. Still, he said Sid could stay if he showcased his piano-playing talent. Excited, Sid agreed and promptly followed Pervashat's request. As he played the piano, an assistant was astonished by his music, and the audience was captivated by his talent. Seizing the moment, Sid used the opportunity to steal jewels from the nobles. After his performance, Pervashat asked for his name, but Epsilon explained that she would introduce him formally once he completed his apprenticeship. Using his abilities, Sid located the ring and swiftly took it. Later, he told Epsilon he wanted to explore the palace. Suddenly, Margaret, the assistant who had been watching him earlier, offered to show him around. Sid agreed, and as they walked, Margaret mentioned she also served Rose. During their stroll, they encountered a soldier who seemed angry at Sid. He tried to get information about Rose's whereabouts from Margaret, who initially hesitated to speak about it. Soon, Margaret also told him exactly where Rose was. When Sid left Margaret, he ran into the soldier who had been watching them. It turned out the soldier was jealous of Sid because he liked Margaret. While the soldier was busy talking about his feelings for Margaret, Sid left him. After a few minutes, Sid reached Rose's room. Rose was overjoyed and hugged him immediately. They discussed her decision to marry Perv Asshat. Despite Sid's attempts to change her mind, he couldn't convince her. One of Rose's bodyguards reported to Perv Asshat that he heard another voice in Rose's room. With a heavy heart, Rose asked Sid to forget about her, making it her only wish. When Perv Asshat arrived at her room, Sid had already left. Perv Asshat didn't know that Sid was on the balcony and overheard their conversation. In the evening, Epsilon spoke to number 559 after their unsuccessful mission. She admitted it wasn't number 559's fault because the Seven Shadows chose not to tell Rose about her mother. Epsilon also mentioned that Shadow and Rose had already met, and he didn't punish her. She suspected Shadow had another reason and wanted to keep it to himself. Their current problem was the enemy's desire to use the ring, which could cause great damage to Oriana. After Sid had his bath, the girls took care of him. He also told them he seemed to have solved their problem. Upon hearing the good news, they were even more impressed with him. On the other hand, Perv Asshat spoke to his boss named Morg, who was one of the Night Lords. He asked for an update on their plan and about the Black Rose. They knew that the Shadow Garden was already making moves in Oriana, so Morg reminded Perv Asshat about it. He added that if Perv Asshat could complete their plan, he would guarantee a seat in the Night Lords for him. Perv Asshat was confident that he could control everything because he had the ring. The next day, after Sid played the piano for the guests, he started looking for the Queen. He wanted to find evidence to show Rose. A few minutes later, he caught her flirting with Perv Asshat in a room. So, at night, he visited Rose's shadow, which made her think he was going to punish her. He asked her to come with him to the room where he saw Perv Asshat and the Queen earlier. Rose couldn't believe what she saw, it made her stomach churn. That was the moment she realized her mother was a traitor. Rose was so disappointed in her mother that she suddenly lost consciousness. Shadow took her back to her room, and when she woke up, she was very sad about what happened to their soldiers and her father. After a while, she came out of her room and saw Sid playing piano on the balcony. Despite what she discovered earlier, she thought of going to a faraway place with Sid because he had stayed by her side. But he said something to her to make her see more important things, then he suddenly disappeared, leaving behind the ring he got from Perv Asshat. When Rose took the ring, she found the courage to follow her true desires for the Oriana Kingdom. On the day of the wedding, many people gathered outside the palace to protest because they were angry about what Rose had done to the former king. A few minutes before the wedding began, Perv Asshat checked the ring again but was shocked to find it missing from the box. He was confused and tried to find a way to postpone the wedding so others wouldn't notice the missing ring. However, the wedding started, and Perv Asshat pretended to search for the ring. When the priest asked Rose if she wanted to marry Perv Asshat, she refused and accused him of manipulating her father. She then showed the ring, which contained a message from the former king revealing Perv Asshat's betrayal. He had wanted to give leadership of Oriana to Rose and instructed his subordinates to support her. After watching the recorded message, Perv Asshat tried to defend himself, but the other nobles rejected him. Rose was about to arrest him when someone suddenly attacked and killed him, along with the queen. It turned out that this was done by Mordred, who disguised himself as the priest. He admitted that he only used Perv Asshat and the queen in his plans. All he wanted was for Rose to wear the ring so he could open the portal. When the portal opened, it released a powerful force known as the Black Rose, from which the Grand Ruler of the Fourth Realm, Ragnarok, emerged. Ragnarok attacked the people outside the palace, so Shadow took action against it. Ragnarok then sent out its disciples, prompting the other members of the Shadow Garden to reveal themselves. Shadow sent Rose away to attend to other matters while he confronted Ragnarok. Meanwhile, Epsilon and Beta dealt with Mordred. Mordred demonstrated his swordsmanship, earning him the nickname the Knight Beyond Men, but the girls remained resolute knowing his sword and armor were merely artifacts. In his anger, Mordred attacked them again, but Epsilon and the other members of the Shadow Garden managed to block his attacks. Meanwhile, Rose fought Ragnarok's disciples to protect her people. She instructed Margaret to open a warehouse to shelter the residents for safety. Later, Mordred was brought before her, and despite his attempts to resist, Epsilon and Beta overpowered him. They started asking him questions about the Black Rose, magical beasts, and the Diablos cult. Mordred didn't want to talk, but they found a way to make him tell the truth. He believed that Ragnarok would destroy them all. The girls insulted the creature, but Mordred was confident in Ragnarok's strength, so he was forced to speak. He began to explain about other dimensions called realms, which were inhabited by monsters with extreme magical powers. These realms revolved around a center, and the human world was one of them. They hadn't determined what was at the center yet because they were still observing it. The bigger problem was when two realms met by chance, they would connect to each other. An example of this happened millions of years ago in their world. They learned that magic didn't exist in their world initially, it emerged when their world collided with a realm. There was a possibility that humans also came from this realm. As for demons, they were formed in their world, but the creature used as a basis for them was from another realm called the First Realm. They learned a lot from this creature, including about the Black Rose. When the Oriana Kingdom accidentally opened it, they went to close the gate again. Rose was supposed to be sacrificed for it, but her father refused to hand her over. Suddenly, something fell on Mordred, and it turned out to be Ragnarok's hand. When they looked up, they saw Shadow's final attack on Ragnarok. Number 559 arrived to tell Beta that they had defeated the enemies. Mordred suddenly got up and approached Ragnarok's severed hand, then inserted his head into it. After doing this, he transformed into a monster, but Shadow called it a defect. In his anger, Mordred attacked Shadow, starting their fight. Shadow toyed with him until he eventually defeated him. For his final attack, Shadow used one of his strongest moves, causing a bright light that reached Midgar, visible to everyone. When the light faded, only Shadow was visible to the girls, but something appeared behind him. When he touched it, he was suddenly sucked in, and at the same time, the ring was destroyed. It revealed the state of the world where Minoru, or Shadow, came from. There was a riot happening there, and Akane was recognized as a hero. Akane thought about Minoru again, especially when she looked at the moon. She wanted to save her other friends, but unfortunately, none of them were alive. On her way back to their base, she was attacked by two men who abducted her. In an abandoned building, she found out that someone wanted to kill her. A man approached her to strangle her, but they stopped when they heard something. Suddenly, the entire building was destroyed, and it was done by Shadow. This is the end of the Eminence in Shadow recap. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and consider subscribing to my channel so you can catch all the new uploads. Thanks for watching.